Well, good morning. I'm here with Doug, and I want to talk about the cryptocurrency strategic reserve. But we'll have other stories too, I imagine. But that's the first thing, of course. Trump talked about this in his campaign, and now that he's put David Sachs, which is a huge crypto advocate, in charge as the crypto czar, they're going to do it. They're going to have a crypto summit at the White House or somewhere in Washington, part of the federal government. And Trump named the cryptocurrencies, and they all went up, of course, like 10% immediately, which helps reverse their decline. Of course, this is not really making it a good time for crypto, I think, because Trump's disastrous policies have already caused the stock market to fall, and crypto fell with it. In fact, one of the articles I read said that gold is where everybody's going, which I think is correct. I think everybody realizes that the American economy is not a good thing to be in right now. The guy in charge of Berkshire Hathaway has pulled all his money out of the stock market. I mean, it's obvious that Trump's policies are going to be disastrous and that the U.S. is going to become a pariah nation with a bad economy very soon, now that we're a Nazi country allied with Russia against Europe, against Canada and Mexico with tariffs. Uh, don't expect anything good coming out of the American economy in the near future. So moving into gold is a logical move. And the crypto, which is supposed to be a hedge against inflation and stuff, has never seemed to do anything other than just follow the stock price. So it doesn't seem to. This, I think, is the big lesson of cryptocurrency and also of TARP and Obama bailing out the government is basically that Keynesian economics is right and Austrian economics is wrong. Prices are not determined by logical fundamentals. They're determined by sort of emotion of people. And, because on the fundamentals, Bitcoin should be the strongest currency in the world, even stronger than gold, because there's just a fixed supply and you can't change it. So it should have the most stable value, but that is not what happens at all. It blows up and down in the wind. So
Yeah.
it
Well, that's what you want to make money is instability, right? You want wide spreads or wide
well,
springs in the value of it.
Well, the day traders want that. The long-term
Right,
investors want the opposite. I mean, and,
right.
and people who are looking for a stable place to put money like gold do not want fluctuation. They want a stable reserve. And for a long time, the dollar's been considered the most stable place to put your money. Gold is the longest. Anyway, Bitcoin, if the fundamentals determine the price, Bitcoin would be a very wise place to put money. But it doesn't seem to be working out that way.
Yeah,
Anyway, I
yeah.
think we're going to have a crypto reserve, which I'm not sure is a bad idea, but I guess we're going to find out. Um, anyway, so they're talking about putting 5% of the US Treasury in crypto and imagining if crypto goes up, they could use that to pay off the national debt or something. And I don't think that's going to work. That's what El Salvador's been trying to do, put all their money in Bitcoin, hoping it will go up. It doesn't really go up that much. Um, but we'll see. I do imagine there'll be somewhat of a rise just as the federal government makes it more palatable and more acceptable and becomes more mainstream. But so far, no sign of that.
Well, there have been some swings in Bitcoin, right?
Yeah,
In the
well,
value.
oh sure, and and
Yeah,
the other ones are even more volatile. I mean, it
yeah.
blows up and down and doesn't. So it's not terribly wise as a store of value. But if you hold on to it for a long time, it, I think you'd probably be better off with a set of Dow Jones Industrial Average exchange traded fund, a market average fund. But Bitcoin is not terrible. But anyway, it doesn't seem to have any real reason to exist. I mean, you have stocks and you have gold, and what is the point of this stuff kind of in the middle?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the only
So
purpose of it is crime, money laundering, basically.
that's what you keep saying.
Yeah, that's that special use case, and even
Yeah.
that is pretty much over because we have chain analysis and the other companies that can track transactions on the blockchain, so the cops can track it. What's interesting, is the North Koreans stole $1.5 billion, $1.3 billion, the biggest cryptocurrency theft ever, about a month ago, and they just laundered it all. And people are watching it all happen, following it, and say, "Yep, that's them. We can prove it's North Korea. We can see them launder it, but we can't stop it." So
Yeah, that's the buy bit. That was going to be my first story.
yeah, yeah. So they are able to use it to perform massive feats of money laundering. If you're skillful enough and you use the alternative currencies, not Bitcoin, you can in fact money launder your stuff, which is the main value of cryptocurrency, I think. You can hide from governments, which means money laundering.
Yeah. So with the Bybit, are you familiar with that crypto? Do you know anything about it?
No, not really. There's a ton of
Yeah, I don't
fly-by-night
either.
exchanges. But what's interesting is they had it in supposedly a cold wallet, and yet they still managed to steal it.
So do you know, I don't know the details. Was it one heist
Yeah, apparently
or
one trick, and from what I've heard, it was the user interface. They managed to manipulate the JavaScript so people saw the wrong thing and they were clicking on something authorizing a transaction without knowing it, which is a pretty
yeah,
common way to do it.
yeah, very
Essentially, social
common.
engineering.
Yeah, yeah. Huh. Interesting. Well, let's stick on Bitcoin for a minute or
Yeah.
cryptocurrencies. So the House Democrats, did you see that? Take aim at Trump's crypto meme coin.
Oh, well, Trump's crypto meme coin seems to be a clear violation of the emoluments clause and bribery and everything else. So there's plenty to criticize there. Although I don't know if
So,
they can get any legal case because the
yeah.
Supreme Court just legalized bribery about 3 months ago.
So
They
we'll
just,
see.
yeah, I think like so many things, especially in crypto, it seems really sleazy and corrupt, but it's probably not exactly against the law.
Right. You know, but we're a country of laws. So sleazy is okay.
Well, we're not a country of laws as far as the president is concerned, not anymore. The president is above the law from the Supreme Court, and bribery is fine as long as you don't get the bribe until after you do the deed. Then it's a gratuity, and that's legal.
Yeah, right. It's a gratuity. You
Yeah,
got to use the right terms. So,
yeah,
Sam, the other one, since we're kind of on this topic of the president,
yeah.
do you know the Tate brothers?
Oh, yeah. They're basically rapists and like sex
Child
traffickers.
molesters.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they got extradited. They just got transported to America where they can hide from the prosecution, essentially.
Well, they were in Romania
Yeah,
and they were not able to leave the country.
right.
And for some mysterious reason, and I have not heard anything more in the story, I think it was Thursday or Friday, they were allowed to leave the country
Yeah,
after a conversation with the White House. And that
yep,
doesn't mean Trump, but somehow our
yep,
government intervened and they took, I think, a private jet to Miami.
yep. And they're supposed to go back to Romania, but no one expects them to. And this is Trump loves to get criminals out. His first thing was to reform the Prince of Saudi Arabia to whitewash his murder. That's why he's best friends with him. That guy was going to be a pariah, but Trump brought him back in. He pardoned the people who committed war crimes from Blackwater. He, he pardoned the guy that took over Obama's Senate seat in Blagojevich.
Yeah, but yeah, Blagojevich, huh? Yeah.
He anybody that's completely corrupt and criminal, Trump will let him out because those are the people he loves.
Yeah. Well, Biden released the what was it, Kids for Cash judge in
Yeah, he did.
Pennsylvania.
He did.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why the president has pardon power at all. It makes no sense to me. Why should he have it? It doesn't seem to do any good. It just seems to be used for corruption and graft. I don't understand why we ever had it. That seems to be one of those things like the king is above the law that never should have been part of the American Constitution. I don't know what they were thinking.
Um, I heard, I can't recall, but there was a reason why it was given to the president.
Yeah, I'd like to know because in my
I
lifetime,
mean,
yeah, my
yeah, I mean
lifetime, I've
it.
never seen it doing any good.
Yeah, it dates back to 1800s, early 1800s, is in terms of why.
Yeah, but we already have a court system. You get a defense lawyer. You can have an appeal. There's all these ways to try to make the
Yeah.
system just. And how is a president just swooping in and say, "Oh no, I like this guy, let him out"? How is that justice?
I, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very good question.
That kind of leads to the one I found. There's a
Okay.
so this German tourist wanted to come visit America, and she was a tattoo artist, and so she was going to spend a month here traveling with her friend and doing art and tattooings in America. And when the immigration office in America found out that she was going to do tattoos, they arrested her for violating her visitor's visa by doing work in America or saying she was going to, and then she just vanished. Nobody could find her for weeks. She's still being held. It's been 25 days. They held her 9 days in solitary. And they still never just got around to processing her. She wants to go home. She has a ticket back to Germany. She's not broke. She never committed any crime at all. And she's willing to abandon her hopes of visiting the country, but they won't let her out of detention. And they wouldn't even let anybody talk to her or find her for weeks. And this apparently is extremely common. They did an inspection of the short-term facilities in San Diego and El Centro, and they found that 42% of the migrants are held beyond the 72-hour standard, with some being held for more than 20 days. So this is our tragically broken border enforcement system. They just grab people, lock them up, and then never have time to like process them. So they're just in limbo.
So what's the 72 hours?
That's the standard. They generally limit detention in these facilities to 72 hours. But since I guess they don't have enough staff, they end up just being there much, much longer.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
understand that, but
yeah.
what do you mean by 72 hours as a standard?
It's the agency's own internal detention standards.
I see.
Those
Okay.
facilities are only supposed to hold people for 72 hours because I guess, they're not very comfortable or anything. She said she was just held for 9 days in solitary in a locked box with nothing but a portable toilet and a yoga mat on the ground. And it was cold and people are screaming all around her and they feed her through a little hole in the wall. And it was so maddening. She started like smashing her head against all the walls, getting all bloody.
Yeah.
But it drives you
Yeah.
crazy. It's an unreasonable place to hold somebody, especially somebody who really did nothing wrong at all. And she didn't even
Well, wait a minute. She did
she
something wrong.
no, she said that she came here to do tattoos. They could have said, no, you can't do that. And then let her through. She didn't actually do the tattoos. She didn't know she couldn't. I mean, this reminds me of the people in Miami that called the government and said, I'm a felon, but I just got out. Is it okay if I vote? And they said, sure, go ahead and vote. And then when they vote, they arrest them and lock them up and say, no, no, you aren't allowed to vote. I mean, if she didn't do anything, she said she wanted to do something. They could
Well,
have told her,
right,
no,
but
you can't do that.
her actions were to do something illegal.
Sure, but I could make that mistake. Like I'm going through customs.
Yes.
I say, okay, I'm
Yes.
bringing in this apple. They say, no, you can't bring in that apple. I don't expect to be locked up for 30 days for that. I expect them to tell me, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this happened to an American. This is pretty good story, short one.
Yeah.
There was a dinosaur hunter who found one of the first intact Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's now in Chicago at the museum. And as it turns out, he was not university educated, but he was self-taught and he was very well respected. And he went outside the country and to buy dinosaur bones or to do sale trade. He took $50,000 in cash. When he came back to the US, he didn't declare that
Yeah.
he had over $10,000. As a result, he wound up getting jailed and he spent, I think, a year and a half, 2 years in Club Fed. But everybody loved him because he would give lectures.
Yeah.
And people who were in prison or in Club Fed learned a lot about dinosaurs.
Oh,
He
yeah.
had a lot of information. He was sort of a celebrity. He made passing the time easier
Yeah.
for a lot of these people. Yeah.
Well, it'd be nice if prison was like that more often instead of being a horrible place with gangs and sexual abuse and stuff.
Yeah. 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 Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me talk about my first story. Well, I guess this is my first, but Skype. Did you ever use Skype?
Oh, yeah. Apparently it's finally dead now.
Yeah, it's finally after 20 years it's been around. And I
It was
got to
it
tell
was
you,
it was the cat's meow, 20 years ago. There was no Zoom, there was nothing like this. It was the way to make a video call. It was a huge alternative to like the long distance telephone network, which cost like 10 cents a minute at that time.
yeah, I'll tell you, when Skype came about, I had a friend who is in Japan, and we probably had a 8-hour conference call,
Yeah.
didn't drop a bit.
Yeah. It had high quality. I remember it was considered the most high quality video conference for
Yeah,
quite a while.
yeah, yeah. I'd sometimes I'd have the Skype call play through the speakers in my office,
Yeah.
and my kids would come in and they'd hear my friend's voice and they'd say, "Where is he?" And I
Yeah.
said, "I'm talking to him through the computer." And they said, "No." And they'd look through the closet and they'd look around to see where he's hiding.
Yeah. Well,
But
to be fair, I think Microsoft is right to turn it off because now they have Teams and Teams is the replacement.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I haven't used Skype in probably 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
but when it came out, it was
Yeah.
good. It
And
was
everybody
very
uses
good.
Teams. Teams has the enterprise class administration stuff, I think, which is why people use it.
Yeah, yeah. So there's no reason for Microsoft to continue the code base
Yeah.
if they have another product that's comparable. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes
Anyway,
sense. Yep.
we're saying goodbye to Skype.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember people got all excited about Skype's encrypted communication and said it's this top secret technique, and it turned out it was just AES. But anyway, it was encrypted, and the government couldn't snoop on it like telephone calls, and people got mad about that.
Yeah, and I think Microsoft paid a pretty penny for Skype, did they not?
I
As
think
I
so.
recall.
Yeah. And they
Yeah,
and probably didn't get much back. It was probably a foolish acquisition. Like,
yeah.
Microsoft does a lot of stupid things. They do three dumb things and one smart thing, and that's their business model. The hit is enough to pay for all the misses. They make a
Yeah,
bunch of
well, it's like any business, right? If just because you go into business doesn't mean you're going to be successful.
Yeah, Microsoft has a successful model. They accept doing a lot of foolish things, but they have big hits. There are other companies
Yeah.
like Apple and Pixar that have a lot of quality control and try to make every product really good. That's another possible business model.
Yeah, so let's take a look since you brought up Apple. How about Apple's AI? How's that going?
Well, people say Apple is really smart because unlike all the others, they did not spend billions of dollars training an AI. They're just using somebody else's AI, I think OpenAI, and it's not really accomplishing anything, but they didn't have to pay much for it. These other people have spent like
Okay.
hundreds of billions of dollars developing these things that so far aren't returning any money back. So, they say Apple was probably wise not to jump in this and get in because right now they're going to pay $500 billion over the next 4 years to build this huge AI data center. But then it turns out that Elon Musk was right. They don't really have the money. And the people that were going to put in the money are backing out because of China's DeepSeek. They're saying, wait a minute, you don't have to do it this way. There's a much cheaper way to accomplish the same thing.
I see, I see. So Apple's commitment to invest billions
Not
is
much.
is
They,
is kind of
they did
evaporating.
Well, they didn't. Apple never committed to invest much. Apple was late to the party. Everybody else had
Right.
AI first. All Apple did was they put an AI chip in the new phone. And they said, if you get the newest hardware, you'll be able to run this Apple AI, which will be great. And then the only thing that rolled out is a really boring pedestrian feature like filling in the background in photos that people say isn't exciting and doesn't really matter. So far, it reminds you of a Windows Vista uh, extra advantage. Remember, they had like a super pro version of Windows Vista that was going to have these special Windows features that
Yeah.
cost like an extra couple $100, and then those new features never appeared. And that's like what Apple AI. Apple Intelligence is supposed to add these awesome features, but so far there aren't any.
I remember Vista had a dynamic Windows
Ultimate.
background.
That was it. Vista Ultimate was
Yeah,
supposed to have
Vista
the
Ultimate.
ultimate advantage, ultimate features that just never happened.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
had to have a special video card and you could have a waterfall in the background.
Oh, well, I didn't know
That's
that.
all I remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it's the same thing. I mean, in principle, if somebody ever finds out what AI is good for, you'll be able to do it on your phone.
Well, Google has announced, let's see, Google, no, Amazon, pardon me. Amazon has announced uh, Alexa AI.
Right. People say it's actually pretty good.
Oh,
All the
I've heard
reviews I
people
saw.
say it's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I know the original whole smart speaker craze from like 5 years ago. Everybody got them, and everybody said after a couple of months you don't use it anymore.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, I do use it. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, I have a microwave oven that's Alexa enabled. Now, you laugh at this, right?
Well, I can see, I guess. I mean, but it's not too hard to press the button. But
It is. It is very difficult to press the button. And the reason is, don't laugh, Sam. They have such tiny print
oh,
on, and they use a black background
yeah,
with like a light tan. Yeah, it's
yeah,
really designer friendly. This is like Apple in their serial numbers on the iPods, where they used a beige background with a light tan and
yeah,
8-point font, and you
yeah.
can't read it unless, or at least I couldn't, unless
I
you're in
know.
direct sunlight or have a magnifying glass.
I know. I went to a couple of cons. I went to um, Secure USU in Utah, and before that, I went to CactusCon in Arizona. Both times I rented a car, and the car fob has got tiny indented black on black buttons.
Yes.
So I can't see
Yes.
what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It reminds me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It turned on a black light on a black panel that illuminated the black on black letters. I don't know. And I remember Caitlin said they're saving money. I said it would cost them that much to put some paint on it.
Yeah.
It's
I,
And of course I am kind of old and my vision's not that good, but they don't have to make everything so damn hard to use, you know.
yeah. I mean, what's the purpose of that
I know.
other than to frustrate people?
I know. Well, I mean, I think what happens is they have a bunch of young people that are very dexterous with good vision, and to them it's easy, and it just looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of gadgets are designed for people with high dexterity, little tiny hidden knobs and stuff, and they
Yeah.
just haven't understand. Some of us are like old and clumsy, and
Yeah. Yeah.
need things
Yeah.
to be more easy to operate. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, so speaking of AI, it turns out, which I didn't think of, but I should have seen coming. You know, Trump had like this 150 executive orders. He was just signing them there. Those things were written by AI. People looked at them; they're garbage. They're repetitive. There are mistakes in them. You know, they said, you know, Trump, last time Trump was in, his team was incredibly sloppy. That's part of why he lost all his court cases, because they would go to court with this document that made no sense at all. Like I saw some of them. They were like transcriptions of his stump speeches. It would be talking about Donald Trump, the most popular president ever, won a huge majority of the vote, and his principles are much better than the radical left Democrats. And this is supposed to be a court document making some kind of point. And he says, what is this crap? This doesn't even make a claim for what you're trying to prove. You're rejected.
Yeah.
And they're using AI to write his executive orders, which you're also going to have to hold up in court. You know, his team doesn't seem to have improved their professionalism. But you know, it's hard for him to get good lawyers since they're all going to get disbarred and thrown in jail because he makes them do illegal things.
Sam, you just touched on my next topic here.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The California bar exam. If you followed this story.
No, no.
So, new California bar exam was rushed into service and they had to delay it a week because it screwed up. The software screwed up. So it used to be you go into like a hotel where they have tables set up and you're taking like a final exam. It was 2 days. So the California bar decided, let's break this up. And one day you can take it securely with a secure browser at home. The next day you have to come in. That way, travel time, you only have to do one night hotel, all that kind of stuff. Makes sense. Okay. So you'd think for the bar exam, they would fully QA it, and it would be for something this significant. And this exam only happens twice a year. So if you fail, you have 6 months to wait before you can come back. And let me also tell you, students who are graduating from law school are expected to pass the exam, and they already have job offers based on them passing the exam.
Yep.
So what happened was so the exam was scheduled for one date. Then they found out the questions got leaked. So they scrambled to redo the questions. So now the test takers are ready. They're sitting in front of their computers. On your mark, get set, go. They open up, they're typing, answering questions, creating legal briefs, and their computers start crashing, freezing. And thousands of bar takers couldn't finish the exam while others could. So it was unknown. And the tricky part about this was that these were people taking it remotely. So it wasn't like you were in a room where people are saying, hey, hey, right? You didn't know that other people are having the same issue. Anyway, they weren't allowed to finish the exam
Yeah.
or complete the exam for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So the Bar Association said, sorry, please come back in 6 months and try again. So no concessions, nothing.
Yeah.
So future lawyers do what future lawyers do, start a class action lawsuit against the bar exam.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting what's going to happen on this because the question is, what are the damages?
It could be a lot of damages. Each one of them could take 6 months of pay and promotions and stuff. And the lawyers don't aren't cheap. So I mean, if a bunch of lawyers were denied the jobs they expected, that could be a lot of money.
Yeah, well, what's the guarantee though that those students would have passed or test takers would have passed?
Well, if you have a class of 1,000, you can say from like last year's results how many of them did in fact pass and get the job, and it was probably 80%. So that'd be a fair estimate of the expected losses. I could
Yeah,
defend
but
that in court.
but there's no proof that you as an individual would have passed.
Yeah, but you don't need that for class action. I used to do class actions.
Did you?
Oh
Okay. Oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I was the
that's
guy that
right.
did I was the guy that estimated the damages. I mean, you just have to estimate like a scientist would the damage the class suffered. And then you get a pool of money and then you distribute it.
Okay, so you get a free retake of the exam.
Well, they would be up to the court. Your lawyer will try to
Yeah,
explain to the judge that you need more. The other guy will argue, and the judge will decide what it is.
yeah.
And remember, it may be many things: a free retake of the exam, maybe a cash settlement, maybe something else. It may be like a job referral agency or something. You could propose things, and you just have to convince the judge to go for it.
Yeah, but Sam, this is probably for an attorney. This
Yeah,
is their most important exam ever.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I
So
think you could even include like emotional harm and stuff, saying, my life is I'm miserable because it really matters to me to pass this test, and you know,
yeah, yeah.
you,
I don't know. We'll see. But the saga, the California exam, it's software that wasn't QA'd, that wasn't tested. And
yeah,
by the way, the people who've looked at the software said it's absolute garbage. They made stupid mistakes that should
yeah.
have been caught in QA testing.
Reminds me of healthcare.gov. Yeah.
Yeah. And Sam, you know what? Speaking of class action lawsuits, I just got a check from a class action lawsuit for $3.59.
What was that for?
I have no idea.
I mean, I just saw one in the news last week where they had a class action, and I've done them so many times, I know what to look for. They had a $20 million reward and like $40 million victims. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen these ones before. You'll get a check for $1 or something. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I did one like that. We worked for like a year on it, and the reward was so small it wouldn't pay for the postage. So we were finally going to have a lottery and only pay 10% of the people, so the check would get up to like $4, so it would pay the postage. And then finally the judge said, "I'm canceling this whole thing. This is stupid." And all of it just went to landfill. We spent a whole year with a team of people assembling these hundreds of thousands of forms, and it all just went straight to landfill. So anyway, so RFK is
Yes, it's
is
in the
at
news.
he's in there. So he canceled the vaccine meeting to plan the next flu shot. So apparently that's not happening. And even though they're not having the meeting of experts on time, they said, "Oh, we'll come up with the right recipe for the flu shot. Don't worry." But we should worry. He's canceled it twice now because I think he doesn't want any vaccines. He doesn't believe in vaccines. And then there's the measles outbreak. And when the measles outbreak in Texas came out, first he said, "Well, this is no problem. This happens all the time." And then they said, "No, it's much worse than usual. It's much earlier than usual. It's hurting more people. It's killed somebody, and that's not normal." So now he issued a statement that says, vaccines are important to protect the public, but it doesn't really say that. And when you read it carefully, it says, you should make an intelligent choice about vaccines and you should do your own research, and we should make the vaccines available for those people who really choose to take it. So if you look at the language, it's just slightly less in your face anti-vax nonsense. And he says what you really need to do is take vitamin A. Because apparently, if you get measles and you're in a country that is so impoverished that people are malnourished, then vitamin A is important as the recovery in hospital, but it doesn't prevent anything. And that's RFK's whole thing. He thinks diet can prevent everything. You shouldn't have any vaccines. And he still thinks that, and he's running the American healthcare that way. So this is kakistocracy. This is ruled by the worst among us, the stupidest among us, doing ridiculous, stupid things that nobody would do, like siding with Russia against Ukraine. Like, what the hell? Repeating Putin's lies. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that ought to make you unable to win any political position at any level in America, especially in the Republican Party, the party of Reagan, where opposing Russia was their number one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's unbelievable that they can just turn the about face on everything. And I think there is a limit. I think now that they're cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, I think the Republican voters will finally notice that they've been swindled. I'm hoping.
So Sam, I'm
Yeah,
just looking here.
yeah,
Let's see. The death rate for measles in the United States at 1919, so roughly 100 years ago,
yeah.
was numbers are per 100,000 people in the US. It was 10.
Right. It doesn't
Okay.
kill. When I was a kid, they didn't think it would kill you. They didn't think it mattered. Everybody got measles and chicken pox. It was just normal.
Yeah, that's true. And the case rate was 180 per 100,000.
Boy, it seemed like a lot more than that when I grew up. It seemed like everybody was getting it.
Well, then we go to, let's say, around 2000. There was a peak. What year was this? Sorry, 1990. There was a peak rate because there was a push for anti-vaxxing. And the case rate from 1990, pardon me, from 1919 went down to 11. And the death rate, again, this is per 100,000, and the death rate went to 0.025.
Hmm.
If we go forward to kind of modern times, and last date I have is 2019, the case rate is 0.38 and the death rate is 0.0003.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Well,
so
remember,
I mean, you're going from a number before vaccines at 13
yeah,
to a fraction, right?
right.
It's a
And
sliver
remember,
of a
and
fraction.
remember last time, they've only recently discovered that measles does a lot more harm that they didn't recognize.
Yeah, you
So it's,
brought that up,
and it was
right?
completely, eradicated before the anti-vax people came in. So it would be nice to eradicate it. I mean, it's not like COVID. It's not that deadly, but it's definitely something we don't want around.
No, yeah, you are correct. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's funny. There was a around 1990, I think, when this spike happened.
yeah,
This happened in an affluent area of San Diego where there were anti-vaxxers.
yeah,
Somebody vacationed in Switzerland
right.
and I think Eastern European countries, and their kids brought it back.
Yeah,
And there was a daycare that everybody got the measles because they weren't, or I shouldn't say everybody,
but
but quite a few of the kids got measles.
yeah,
And the health department in San Diego County came in and quarantined the families.
yeah,
So they had to stay in their homes for 3 weeks.
yeah. Well, that's a logical
So,
response, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yep,
Anyway,
interesting. Yep. Anyway,
that's it for me. How
yeah, well,
about you? Any more?
I have some actual InfoSec stories, sort of.
Okay.
The U.S. Cyber Command is now not going to do any offensive operations against Russia anymore because now Russia is our best friend. Now, CISA says, however, that they're still going to protect us from Russia, and they don't explain why their latest memo mentions our opponent nations of Iran and China, but somehow not Russia anymore. So, knowing Trump has always felt like we should deny that we have any cyber attacks coming from Russia because it's a sore point with him, because Russia pushed the election towards him in 2016 and 2020, and he wants to pretend that didn't happen. So, I think CISA will probably stop defending us from Russian attacks soon, but at the moment they're pretending they're still going to report Russian attacks. I think they'll find out when they do that Trump will shut them down for that.
Yeah, yeah,
And so, also, one thing I read and I hadn't thought of, which is that this current government climate where everybody who works for the government is very low morale. Everybody around them has been fired. If they haven't been fired, they're likely to get fired. The people that got severance don't know if they're getting their severance pay. Their bosses don't know what's going on. People are just very, very unhappy. So Russia and China are stepping up their recruitment efforts for espionage, saying, hey, right now we have all these disgruntled federal employees with access to secrets. They've either just been fired or they know they're about to. So let's recruit them to be spies. And that's what the expert said. You're creating a very dangerous environment for insider threats now, which is quite true. All those people are not feeling patriotic and happy about their work in the government right now, and I don't blame them.
yeah, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and you have no oversight or
Right.
less oversight.
Right. And the system above them is not working. Managers don't know what's going on. And so, anyway, OpenAI developed a hallucination test to create their models, a bunch of questions that models are likely to hallucinate on, and they ran their latest expensive model that cost 30 times as much as the previous one on it. And so the new reasoning model hallucinates 61% of the time. And they said, that might sound bad, but that's a lot better than our previous ones. Our previous models hallucinated 80% of the time. So there you go. This reminds me of there's a lot of people who do this. I think it was a TSA test a few years ago where they tested how often they can sneak a gun through TSA, and they found
Yeah,
they could sneak it through 95% of the time. And they said, yeah, but last year we got it through 98% of the time. So it's improved. Anyway,
there, there you go.
yeah. And in the UK, the UK just passed this law that they have to be able to get in all the encrypted communications. So
Right.
Apple removed their encryption option for iCloud there. And so somebody went and did a research paper of what happens, and they found that police officers and employees misusing access to police database now account for over half of all cybercrime prosecutions in the UK. So giving the police more of that data is a highly questionable move. So I didn't know it was that bad. But, when the cops have access to everything, a bunch of them do improper things with it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the last one I had was pretty interesting. Stable diffusion. Stable diffusion creates images. And the way it does it is they take you want to make a Picasso, it'll get some Picassos to start from, like on the internet, and then it will take each Picasso and it will add noise to it in 1,000 small steps until it is completely degenerated to noise. And then they'll train an AI model at cleaning up the noise to get towards a
Okay.
Picasso. And then to generate a new Picasso, they just start with random noise and deblur it. That's how it works. This sounds insane, but that's really how it works. That's why they call it stable diffusion. And now they've made a model that does that for text. They call it Mercury, and they say the result of this is it is 19 times faster than GPT-4o, and they say it should be more accurate because the normal GPTs predict the words one at a time, and they base each word on the previous words. But this one is like holographic. It has the entire text, just sort of changes from random junk into words all at once. So all the context is included. So it's a new concept, an interesting technique, and another way to make AI faster. And this, like many of these stories, it's part of why I think people are not anxious to cough up that $400 billion to make that giant data center. There are a lot of research projects that show that you don't need this monstrous, highly powered pile of GPUs to do this. You could just be smarter about it and get the job done with a lot less work.
So, Sam, how good are the images after stable diffusion?
Oh, there've been ones that caught all the attention. That's how a lot of the ones you see are. They're quite good. They look
Okay.
they they're high enough resolution. You imitate the style of any artist you want, and they look pretty good. I think they do have the usual problems we've all gotten used to. They tend to have like too many fingers on the hands and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Okay.
that's how most the images that we see now have been generated, and they are improving rapidly. But I think the fundamental problem with them, with all these things like Gemini and ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot, is right now they're all using this incredibly clumsy brute force way to do it, using these huge models with billions of parameters that were trained on the whole internet, and they take a whole rack of GPUs to run, so that they're selling it for like $20 a month, but it's costing them far more than that just to run it. They're all running on loss leaders.
Hmm.
Actually, that's
Okay.
why OpenAI just tried to raise their price by a factor of 30 for their latest model, because the actual cost of these models running in the data centers vastly exceeds what people are paying for them. And everybody's investing all this money betting that pretty soon there's going to be a killer app that everybody wants that will actually be cost effective enough that they can make money on it. But nobody really knows what that's going to be or how long it's going to be before that appears.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, if I was running a company, I would be real reluctant to spend that kind of money on AI, especially since China came in and said, we can do this for like 1,000 times less money and it's just as good.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I think the only company that making sense right now is Salesforce. Salesforce has little AIs that are agents that do like one job, and they say they're simple, they're small, and they are actually cost effective. Like I think it should be like your telephone operator that answers and gives people like 10 choices or something. Have a little job, not that different than what they did before AI, and a more modest, small scale AI makes more sense, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I would agree.
Yep. Well, anyway, um,
You got to take smaller steps to get to bigger ones, right?
yeah, well, uh, and the world goes on as always. I'm going around to conferences everywhere teaching AI security, but both of the colleges I teach at cannot get their act together to make an official course. And I think, as usual, they're not going to make it an official course until it's not hot anymore.
Yeah,
So maybe in like 2 years, they'll let me teach this course because by then nobody will care. But anyway, that's life.
yeah, that's life. We'll see where this goes.
Yeah, well, I,
Ex
I learned as a teacher, I can't let the college hold me back. I just regard myself as an independent consultant, and they are one of my clients because you can't let them control you because they are very disappointing clients. Colleges are very crazy, very dysfunctional, and so I do what I can for them when they're ready for it. But when they're not ready, I just go somewhere else and do the exciting stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well, that's it for
All
this.
right. Well, that's it for me.
And we'll have another one on Friday.
Oh, yep. We'll have another one on Friday. We'll see you then.
Okay.